Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the first Thursday of June. Today's June 3rd, and I hope everybody's doing well. Been a couple weeks since I've done a video because the last two Thursdays we were doing special lunch and learns as far with Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in May. So wanted to pick up our videos again. Well, now that we're in June, June is Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer Pride Month, LGBTQ Pride Month. It's celebrated each year in the month of June. So for today's DEI talk, I wanted to talk just a little bit about, kind of the history of how we got to where we're at today with the LGBTQ Pride Month, as well as answer two questions, and it was actually, I was like, what do I not know about, LGBTQ Pride Month? And so I did a little research and I basically answered the two questions that I had always wondered, and literally until, a couple hours ago, I did not know the answers to these questions. I had never really researched it, and I'm really glad that I know now, and I want to share that with you as well. So again, LGBTQ Pride Month is currently celebrated each year in the month of June to honor the 1969 Stonewall Uprising in Manhattan. And I'll get to that in a second. But the Stonewall Uprising was a tipping point, if you want to call it that, for the gay liberation movement in the United States. In the United States, the last Sunday in June was initially celebrated as what we call Gay Pride Day, but the actual day was flexible. And in major cities across the nation, this day soon grew to be encompass a month-long series of events. So today's celebrations include parades, picnics, parties, workshops, concerts. And LGBTQ Pride Month even attracts millions of participants all across the world. In addition to celebrating, the pride aspect of it, memorials are also held during this month for members of the community who have been lost to hate crimes or to HIV and AIDS and other diseases, And the purpose of the commemorative month is to recognize the impact that lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender individuals have had on history, not just locally, but nationally and internationally as well. So it was back in 1994 that a coalition of education-based organizations in the U.S., they initially designated October as LGBTQ History Month. It was just, a month of history. But in 1995, the General Assembly of the United National Education Association included LGBTQ within their series of months, and it was eventually changed to June. But every year, still on October 11th, is actually National Coming Out Day, and it was, it was the kind of the first celebration of gay pride and LGBTQ pride. So really, really fascinating history. But as I mentioned earlier, this all started back in 1969. You may have heard of the Stonewall Uprising, but if you haven't, the Stonewall Inn was one of the most popular gay bars in New York City at the time. And throughout the state, actually, of New York, it was illegal to serve alcohol to a gay person until 1966, if you can believe that. And in 1969, homosexuality was still considered a criminal offense. So obviously this led many gay establishments to operate, bars without liquor licenses for fear of of being regulated. So as you can imagine, without, serving alcohol without a liquor license would open the door for potential raids. It was very common. So. But during the early morning hours of June 28, 1969, plainclothes police officers from the New York City Police Department came to the Stonewall Inn with a search warrant, authorizing them to investigate the illegal sale of alcohol at Stonewall. They entered the establishment and they began interrogating the patrons. And the raid did not go over as expected. There was a lot of pushback. There was a lot of angry people. It quickly became somewhat violent, and word of this raid spread quickly throughout the city. So by that evening, so this is in the early morning hours of Saturday, June 28th, but by the night, thousands of protesters had gathered at the Stonewall and in the surrounding area. Again, and this kind of sparked, the first really, it became an international phenomena about the rights of gays and lesbians and bisexuals and transsexuals. So, and it's really spread from there. So, so if you ever, kind of wonder where this all started, it really started back in 1969 with the Stonewall Inn in New York City. So. Again, really kind of fascinating history. And of course, a lot more things happen, after that. So if you're interested, just Google Stonewall Inn and it'll give you kind of the timeline and the history of what else kind of followed from there that led us to where we're at today. So Well, as I mentioned earlier, there were a couple of questions, that I personally had, that I had never really, I'd always kind of knew in the back of my head, but I never really, looked it up and to understand the answer to these two questions. My first question is, where did the term pride come from? Because we call this Pride Month, and it was something that, you don't really see, reference to other groups as much. It usually refers to LGBTQ individuals. So, when I looked it up, it's actually credited to a woman named Brenda Howard. She was a bisexual New York activist, and she was actually nicknamed the Mother of Pride. That was just her nickname. And she actually was the first person to organize a parade in 1970 that commemorated the 1-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. So it was a big, big parade in New York City. And because she was the Mother of Pride, it became known as the Pride Parade. And the name kind of stuck. So basically from 1970 to today, it's an honor for this activist named Brenda Howard, who really got Pride Month kind of going essentially. So that's where the name came from. So that was one thing that I learned from doing research, and the other thing that I learned was that we've all seen the Pride Parade. That it has the colors of the rainbow, and it's come to be a symbol for the community. But I personally I always kind of wondered if you look at the stars and stripes on the American flag, we know what those represent, but what do the colors of the Pride flag essentially means. So it actually goes back to 1978. There was an artist named Gilbert Baker. He was actually commissioned by San Francisco City Supervisor Harvey Milk. And if you remember, there's a movie about Harvey Milk starring Sean Penn. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. He was one of the first openly gay elected officials in the U.S. He wanted to make a flag for the city's upcoming Pride celebrations. So Baker, who was a prominent gay rights activist, gave a nod. He wanted to kind of, because he was also, a very strong American. He gave a nod to the stripes of the American flag, but drew inspiration from the rainbow to reflect the many different groups within the gay community. So that was kind of how it became. And each one of the colors of the rainbow actually represents something different. So hot pink represents sex. Red symbolizes life. Orange symbolizes healing. Yellow symbolizes sunlight. Green symbolizes nature. Turquoise symbolizes like magic or art or spirituality. Indigo represents serenity, and violet is the spirit of all. So again, each one of the colors of the flag actually do represent some aspects, which again I thought was really fascinating because again I just never known that. So hopefully if you didn't know that now we have some education about the history of the flag. So. Well, like I said, for today, I just want to kind of introduce LGBTQ Pride Month, and we're going to be doing stuff throughout the month to honor this month. We have a couple of lunch and learns next week and the week after, so hopefully you're able to attend those. They're just 30 minutes long, but those who've been attending, thank you. I think I've gotten some great feedback. I know you're enjoying this stuff that we talk about, and it's just really a real quick 30 minutes. So I hope you're able to join us if you haven't already. So hope everybody has a great weekend. It's supposed to be beautiful this weekend, so I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk next week.